Hey, Energy Financial Modelers. We are 2 days away from the final exam, and someone just told me that they couldn't see this draft final exam in Module 6. Apparently it's because I had not assigned it to you guys. I guess we know who was the first one to start studying for the final. So I'm going to try to provide a more streamlined video. Wasn't real happy with my last one, so I'm going to click on the draft final, and we'll walk through it. After you agree not to cheat, hopefully in the last 2 days, you will be familiarizing yourself with this draft. The idea was to have been doing that longer. When you take the exam at 8 a.m. on Friday, I will tell you which company I would like to evaluate. May be the same for everybody. It may be different companies for everybody. And a couple of notes here you should read about uploading files in Canvas, but I won't bore you with that. You know the drill on download the 10K. Just go out to the company website, get the 10K as a PDF, and upload it. So I think in this example I'm going to do Apache, so I'll go to SEC filings for Apache, and it will work better for you and better for me if when you find this under annual filings, probably, if you'll click on this little PDF icon. Almost every company has multiple formats. If you click that hyperlink, it's going to pull it up in a browser HTML type format usually. I strongly prefer the PDF hyperlink. And so we could save this and then upload it into Canvas for our first 10 points, but I won't bother that here. And then the next, you know the drill on SEC Edgar. Save that file as you downloaded it, so that if we have any need for some partial credit, I'll have in question 2 your upload of the raw SEC Edgar data. And then in question 3, we're going to rearrange that. We'll get the 3 tabs and then combine all 3 into a 4th tab called Originals. If I click on IS and drag it and then press Control and let go of the mouse before I let go of Control, it will copy it. And then I can start my Originals. Since I copied the income statement, I've already got the income statement at the top of Originals. So I can go to Balance Sheet, Control Home, Control Shift N, Copy. Control End, down a couple and left, Paste. Now I'd like to sort those 3 columns left to right, but watch what happens if I try. It tells me that some of these cells are merged, so I'm going to Control 1, get over to Alignment and Alt-M a couple of times. Now they're not merged, and I can do an Alt-DS, sort left to right based on row 2, and if I'm doing the entire columns, then I can be confident I've got 2017, 18, 19. Balance sheet 18, 19. Cash flows 17, 18, 19. If you do the entire columns, you'll probably be safe on this balance sheet. Otherwise, there's a good chance you'll get tripped up by that empty column. So we'll save that file and upload that into question 3. In question 4, we're ready to download the template. And then we're ready to copy the Originals data. So I'll go back over to the Originals. Now if I just copy the cells, it won't bring the column widths along with it. But if I'll copy the entire columns with Control C, paste into J1, notice it brought the column widths with it, which is kind of handy. Oops, don't want to readjust them all. So, okay, the next step is to reference the blue cells. And I think for this exam, I am going to do my best to give you a really nice template that matches closely to your to the company that I give you, because I've changed this up a bit lately and don't want to make things any more confusing than they already are. Now, if for some reason I don't get that perfect, and you see a line item over here that does not have a match over here, then you don't need to use that. You can just leave it blank. So if I check my math, 6423 matches my total revenues. And I'm going to turn off the sound and zip through the rest of this. Okay, they didn't line up perfectly, but they came close. If I sum these, I get 5505. If I sum these, I get 5505. And they even gave me the subtotal of 5505. So I feel pretty good about my expenses. Now notice what I had to do was put the net interest expense in to the subtotal line. I'm going to jump over to the 10K and see if I can find a breakdown on that. I'll do a search, interest income, and look at that. This table popped up and it has interest expense, some other types of expense, and maybe some income, and then an interest income. I think we'd be doing pretty well if we copy this 13, 22, and 19. Be sure to get those orders right. And then everything else will be interest expense. So I should be able to say that this interest expense is equal to the total minus the income. And so I have an interest expense that's a little bit larger than the financing costs as they reported them, but it's offset by this number I got out of the 10K. So if I copy and paste those as values, and I check the sum on that, then I get these three numbers. Okay, so I feel good about that. Now remember, with this new model, new template, we have didn't have any other expense, but we do have a place for, well, income tax provision, of course, current and deferred. And make sure that my math works on that. In fact, let me make sure my math works on all this stuff. Okay, so far so good. Those three numbers match those three numbers. Now I didn't have any discontinued operations up here, but I did have a non-controlling interest. And what I figured out in the dry run of this was that those non-controlling interests, if I take the 286 minus 1, I don't get 40. They actually left out another row here. This non-controlling interest and this non-controlling interest should have been up here. So this is a bust in the data. I'll try not to give you a company with a bust in the data. But to make this work, I'm going to have to come over here. Now that works. I just put it a row too high, didn't I? And we did not have any preferred stock or participating securities. So I probably showed some extra lines, subtotals in here that you wouldn't need to. Again, I'll try to make your exam template match more closely what's happening with the actual company I give you. But if I don't, feel free to leave some blank lines there. Now we know that we get dividends from the cash flow statement in the financing section. And we don't have a place to check retained earnings, but we'll just have to roll with it. Trust our math on there, subtracting one number. We do have share counts. And we have now completed the restatement of the income statement. On the exam, you would proceed to restate the balance sheet. And then eventually we'll build a consolidated statement of cash flows, but remember, we don't restate that from history. And then the model has the free cash flow and the DCF and some ratios as well. So we are at a point now on our exam where we have gone through and restated all this, and we're ready to upload it. So we want to upload the file as it is for partial credit. And then we want to move to question 5, where we're going to remove the originals. The first thing we do is duplicate the template tab and rename it as model. And I said you might want to shade column A. I probably should have said column A and B on the template so you don't accidentally try to work there. It's completely up to you, but here's what I mean by that. So the idea is we want to, after we've uploaded this, problem number 5, nope, problem number 4. After we've uploaded this in problem number 4, then we want to, again, duplicate the tab by dragging it, pressing Control, and letting go of the mouse before we let go of Control. And then we can rename that one as Model. Now, you can just imagine how easy it would be for me to come in here thinking I was working on this sheet, but actually be working on this sheet. So I'm going to come in here to the old version that still has these links, which I may need to get back to. I'm going to highlight those some color so it's going to jump out at me. If I think I'm working on this version and I accidentally get on that version, whoa, it's going to be easy to tell. And that's the only reason I said you might want to highlight those columns. Because what I want you to do here is copy and paste all the blue cells as values. Now not your subtotals, okay, but the blue ones that we're referencing things over here. Reference, don't know why that's not coming. Oh, that's the value I chose. Referencing the originals, we want to paste them as values. And we'll know we got it correct if when we come in and delete these columns, we don't see any refs in here. So let me give you an example. If I think I pasted that as a value, and I come in here and I do a Control minus to delete that, it says, hey, I'm looking for something that you deleted. That's a problem. And so we kind of like that. If I just come in here and hit the delete key and emptied those cells, it changes them to 0, and I don't really know that I got rid of those references. And we need to get rid of these references so we can delete those columns and the numbers won't change. So I'm going to come through here and copy, paste special, and then V for value. And if I'll get all these right, then I won't see any of those refs, whoops, when I go in and delete the columns. And I would continue down through the balance sheet, but I'm not taking the time to do that. I'm saving that fun for you. So let me come in and see if I can delete these and see how many refs show up. Hey, I think I did a pretty good job of copying and pasting as values. If you happen to look at the version I did for 3453, it took me about 7 times to get all these copies and pasted as values. This is before, when I deleted those columns, I stopped seeing references. Okay, so we have got a nice template now to build a model with that's got historicals on. Now, I didn't copy and paste these as values because I'm going to use that little trick to carry those subtotals forward, like so. But first I want to come up here and do the revenue build. There's a video dedicated to revenue build, but what it says is to fill in these blue cells, and maybe I should make them green. I think we'll try to upload this model, this template with those as green, because it confuses what I just said about blue. And then I can go out to the 10K, grab that production, and bring it in. And I think if I'll actually bring that in thousands of barrels, remember in the oil field we use M to mean thousands. Don't ask me why. I'll bring that in as thousands. That other video, it said go to the MD&A section, scroll down. With Apache, I think we see revenue first, and I don't want to be misled by these oil revenues in dollars, because I need these numbers. These are oil in barrels per day, natural gas in MCF per day, and natural gas liquids in barrels per day. So these are numbers that I'm going to want to divide by 1,000 once I get them in, and I'll show you that trick after I speed this video up. Remember, we divide by 6 when we're converting to barrels of oil equivalent. We divide the gas by 6. It's because gas doesn't have near the energy density that oil does. I shouldn't try to multitask and talk and calculate at the same time. And remember, that trick was to copy over here, keep our number formats the way we want them, and then we can say copy, Alt-E-S-I for divide by. And now we're in thousands of barrels per day. So I will do an Alt-E-A-A to get rid of that. I can copy that formula to there. And then I just need to take the thousands of barrels per day times the days in the year and divide by 1,000 to get millions of barrels per year. Copy, paste special formula. And so you've pulled the daily production out in thousands of barrels per day. If you get that wrong, I'll be very lenient. I know we haven't focused a lot on units in this class. Converted that to millions of barrels per year. I've provided the prices, and then you can calculate, well, if I had 89 million barrels at $50 a barrel, plus 350 units of gas times the gas price, plus NGL times the NGL price, and I copied that across, that's what I could expect if I got hub pricing. But I didn't get hub pricing. I got that, which is a percentage of hub pricing. And if I did that correctly, then Apache's actually receiving a little bit better than hub pricing, which means that either their quality is higher or they are closer to the refinery. So if I were to carry that assumption forward, then we'll apply it to whatever hub pricing we think we get. Now remember, on the exam, I'm going to give you a dashboard, and you can link it to these cells. I'll tell you, I'll draw the controls, you'll link them, and that's how we'll get our prices in there. But let's say it turns out to be 30, 40, 50, 2, 2.5, and 3. Probably a little optimistic for the current situation. I think these are formulas that could copy across as well. And then for the production, either I have you tie it to the dashboard, or you simply calculate it as the growth rate that we've seen historically. So what we've seen is this over this minus 1. That's just our year-over-year growth rate for oil and gas. And then I think that looking at NGL as a percent of the gas stream is probably a good way to forecast that. So that's the way I've built this template, but you can just read that down here and apply it here, and then apply it to your drivers as well. So if we want to grow oil production times 1 plus that growth rate, yes, I want a parentheses. If I copy that, it applies to gas. Now remember, for NGL, I said take the gas times this. And let's see if that gave me a pretty decent trend on numbers. Just a reality check. Oil seems to be backing off a little, while gas seems to be continuing to grow. NGL seem to be growing on trend. So that passes a reality check for me. And I can take the revenue using the same logic we talked about a moment ago and in the previous video. Now that's not on trend, but look what happened. We had $57 and $65 last year. We're at about half of that going forward. So actually it does make sense. And then I think to forecast all these others, if you'll just follow the examples in the ratios and drivers template, this would be a good thing to look at before the exam, but you have a couple days to do that still. Most of these, almost all of them, are dollars per BOE. So if I want to know what my lease operating expense was, how much did it cost me to operate a well, divided by the number of barrels that I produced in that year. And remember, this is a year's worth of operating expenses and a year's worth of barrels of oil equivalent. So I'm dividing by E18. I get 837. And so if I take that similar logic and take each number and divide by E18, this is 0, so I won't bother. Now, impairments and restructuring charges are things that I don't really forecast going forward. I don't plan to have an impairment unless I just have a really reliable oil forecast that I'd like to cause to have an impairment. That could be a dashboard item, I suppose. I could say if the oil price goes below 20, then impair by $1 billion or something. But I don't know, good thought. Normally we wouldn't do that. And now we're at interest as a percent of average debt, effective tax rate, dividend payout ratio. These are all things you've seen before. And by the way, I'd probably tell you which one of these to use, or only provide one on the template. Tie one to the dashboard, perhaps. I think from this point forward, guys, you're in a pretty comfortable situation. You've done all this stuff before. So let's go back and do a progress check on our exam. We removed the originals by deleting those 4 columns. We forecasted the model. That's where I kind of stopped, all the way down through free cash flow, DCF, and performance ratios. And then linked to the dashboard. So that's the final thing on here. And we're uploading our current file each step of the way so I can give you partial credit. If you want to just do it perfectly, then I'll just look at this one and I won't have to look at any of the other ones and give you full credit. But the dashboard, the way that works is when you open it up on the exam, you'll see some little controls up here that I've drawn for you. I'll go over to developer and insert and put all kinds of neat little gadgets on there. And I'll probably put some cells out here that are yellow. And so like, maybe if it's oil price, tie oil price to this cell, and then I might have some numbers like 20, 30, and 40. And you'd have to be creative. You'd have to look and be judgmental, I guess. See the control that I put over here, tie it over here, and then tie these numbers to their appropriate place in the model. And in this case, it would probably be like index that array based on what was chosen, linked in that cell from the control. And then fully expect to see a chart on that dashboard or more. I like charts. And again, when you get all that thing saved and uploaded to question 8, then you are finished. I do want to stress, if you get lost or run out of time anywhere along the way, jump over here and do the dashboard. That's probably going to be the easiest part for you, is to link those controls to these cells and then link these cells to that area. And what I'll do is I'll place that somewhere out here so that when you paste in your 4 columns, you can do your work with your blue cells, and then when you delete those columns, you'll still have this stuff left to work with. So it's been a joy having you guys this semester. I hope you enjoy this. Expect lots of partial credit throughout this exam, but remember, I can't give you partial credit on anything you don't attempt. So have fun, save early, save often.